The drama surrounding the Indiana Fever didn't erupt out of nowhere. It didn't begin with a single headline or one controversial decision. Instead, it built slowly, almost invisibly, until suddenly the signs were impossible to ignore. It started with something simple to simple, in fact, posts, more posts than usual, then even more. Constant reminders about ticket availability, urgent tones, repeated pushes across every platform. At first glance, it looked like standard promotion, but the longer it continued, the clearer it became that this wasn't routine marketing. This was something else entirely. This was an organization trying almost desperately to fill seats that, not long ago, sold themselves. And that's where the unease really begins. Because this is not just any team struggling with demand. This is a franchise built around one of the most electrifying names in modern basketball, Caitlin Clark, a player who didn't just attract attention, she redefined it when she arrived. Everything changed overnight. Arenas sold out in minutes. Secondary markets exploded. Fans weren't just buying tickets. They were chasing them, competing for them, willing to pay whatever it took just to witness something special. That was the reality. That was the standard. Now, that reality feels distant. Because just a season later, the contrast is impossible to ignore. Games that should be automatic sellouts are sitting with visible gaps. Entire sections remain untouched. Prices that once felt justified by overwhelming demand are now being met with hesitation, even resistance. And perhaps most telling of all, the organization itself is working harder than ever just to generate interest. That shift alone raises a question that can't be avoided. What changed on the surface? There are easy explanations. Economic pressure is real. Costs are rising everywhere. Fans are more selective about how they spend. All of that plays a role, but it doesn't fully explain this situation. Because those same pressures existed before, and they didn't stop fans from showing up in overwhelming numbers. They didn't stop the surge. They didn't slow the momentum. So if it's not just the economy, then the answer has to go deeper. It comes down to something far more fragile and far more difficult to repair. Trust. Last season didn't just test the team on the court, it tested the relationship between the organization and the people who support it. And that relationship didn't come out stronger, it came out strained. Because for many fans, the experience wasn't just about wins and losses, it was about uncertainty. It was about showing up without knowing what they were going to get. It was about investing time, money, and emotion into something that suddenly felt unpredictable in the worst way. At the center of that uncertainty was the handling of Clark herself. Not just her performance, but her availability, injury updates that felt inconsistent, timelines that shifted without clear explanation, game time decisions that left fans guessing until the very last moment. For a casual observer, that might seem like part of the sport. But for fans planning trips, buying expensive tickets, and building entire experiences around seeing a generational talent, it meant something else entirely. It meant risk. And once that risk turns into disappointment, even once it changes everything. Because fans remember. They remember the anticipation, the buildup, the excitement. And they remember what it felt like when that expectation didn't match reality. That memory doesn't fade quickly. It reshapes behavior. It makes people cautious. It turns immediate buyers into hesitant observers. Now layer on another factor, one that cuts even deeper. It's not just about whether Clark is on the floor. It's about how she's being used when she is. Because for many, the expectation isn't simply to see her play, it's to see her play freely, dynamically, at her full potential, to see the creativity, the range, the playmaking that made her a phenomenon in the first place. When that expectation isn't met, the disappointment shifts. It's no longer about absence. It's about limitation. And that's where scrutiny begins to fall on leadership, particularly on Stephanie White. Coaching decisions, rotations, offensive structure, these are always part of the game. But when they appear to restrict rather than amplify a generational talent, They become something more. They become a point of tension between vision and expectation, between system and star power, from the outside. It starts to feel like a disconnect, a sense that what fans are paying to see and what they're actually getting are not aligned. And once that perception takes hold, it doesn't just fade away, it grows. The offseason hasn't done much to quiet those concerns. In fact, in some ways, it has amplified them. Roster moves that raise eyebrows, strategic decisions that don't immediately make sense to the public, messaging that, at times, feels dismissive of criticism rather than responsive to it. All of it contributes to a broader narrative, one where the organization appears more focused on its own direction than on addressing the concerns of the people who support it. And fans notice everything. They notice the pricing. They notice the availability. They notice the tone. And most importantly, they notice the pattern. Because when high prices meet uncertainty, hesitation becomes the logical response. When past experiences create doubt, waiting becomes the safer choice. It's not rejection, it's caution. That's what makes this moment so significant. It's not just about ticket sales. It's about what those sales represent. They're a reflection of confidence, a measure of belief. And right now, that belief isn't as strong as it once was. What makes it even more striking is that the talent is still there. The potential hasn't disappeared. If anything, the roster on paper looks stronger, more complete, more capable of competing at a high level. But talent alone isn't enough to drive engagement. Not anymore. Not when the connection between team and fan has been tested. Because at the end of the day, this isn't just about basketball. It's about experience. It's about expectation, meeting reality. And when that balance is disrupted, even the most exciting product can struggle to maintain its momentum. The path forward isn't complicated, but it isn't easy either. It requires consistency, clarity, a willingness to rebuild trust through actions, not just messaging. It requires aligning what fans hope to see with what they actually experience. And most importantly, it requires understanding that loyalty isn't automatic. It has to be earned and re-earned over time. Right now, fans are watching not with the same immediate excitement as before, but with a more measured perspective. They're waiting to see if things change, if lessons have been learned, if the version of this team they believed in can still become reality. And that's the real story unfolding here. Not a collapse, not a failure, but a turning point. A moment where the organization has to decide how it responds not just to criticism, but to opportunity, because the pieces are still in place. The spotlight is still there. The potential is still undeniable. The only question is whether they can bring it all together in a way that restores what's been lost. So now it turns to you. Do you think this situation is being overblown? Or is this a real warning sign for the future of the franchise? Is it about pricing, coaching decisions, or something deeper like trust and communication? And most importantly, do you believe the Indiana Fever can turn this around and reconnect with their fan base before the season hits its peak? Drop your thoughts below and join the conversation. And if you want more deep dives like this, breaking down the stories behind the headlines and the moments shaping the game, make sure to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you don't miss what comes next.